Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of The Brett Allen Show, a pop culture video and podcast where we talk to your favorite actors from film, television, music, and comedy, and more. Really, anything pop culture related. Thanks for watching and listening. Brought to you by C Suite Radio. I'm excited for this conversation, just on many levels, but we are chatting with actor Catherine Mary Stewart. If you are a child of the 80s and up, you will definitely know who we're talking to. But she has a brand new film out, Ask Me to Dance, which I had the opportunity to watch. And it's a great movie. And we're going to talk about other things as well. Thank you so much for hanging out today, Catherine. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. You actually saw Ask Me to Dance?
So I was able to get a screener and watch just a little bit, like probably 5 to 10 minutes of it.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so I was able to watch a little bit of it. And from what I can tell, this just looks like a lot of fun. Let's talk about the project and sort of how it came about for you and your involvement with it.
Right. Well, Tom Malloy, who wrote and directed it, is a friend of mine since, I don't know, 2009 or something, when he asked me to be in a movie of his called The Attic with
Yes.
Elizabeth Moss. And he and I just got along really great. It was a great role, John Savage played my husband, which was cool. Elizabeth Moss was the lead. I mean, it was a really, and it was kind of like a horror movie. Well, it was a horror movie about a haunted house, basically, but a really interesting take on a haunted house. So that was really cool, and that kind of established our friendship and relationship. And since then, I've been in 3 other movies of his. He produces and directs, and I did a movie called Love and Dancing with Amy Smart, and Billy Zane was in it. It was along the same lines, sort of West Coast swing dance, which Tom Malloy is a big fan of.
Mm-hmm.
He does West Coast swings and he loves it and he's passionate about it. So this is his second kind of West Coast swing themed movie. But this is the first one he's directed. And as he said, with Love and Dancing, it was sort of a romantic comedy, but he felt like it was a dance movie with some comedy, and this is like a romantic comedy with dancing.
Yeah.
So he liked the fact that he had a lot more control over just the shooting and the outcome of this movie. And I've seen a little bit of it, and it looks really fun. It's a really sweet romantic comedy about Jack and Jill. It's so cute. Jack and Jill, who are both quite accomplished dancers, but this sort of subplot is, I mean, that's kind of the subplot, is that they're dancers, but the plot is that both of these two they don't know each other, they never cross paths, but they're both sort of unlucky in love, and they both happen to run across this gypsy who predicts that they're going to meet the love of their life by New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve is a few days away. So we follow the two characters day to day, having these terrible dates, and coincidentally, but unknown to them, they get kind of pass each other without knowing it. And it goes on from there, but it's very sweet. And then, of course, he incorporates the dance in it. And, my background is, well, when I started out in performing arts, I was a dancer. So he said, there'll be a little bit of West Coast swing dance in this, and you get to do some. I'm like, okay. So that was really fun. I mean, it's like you get there and you spend like 5 or 10 minutes learning this kind of technique that you've never done before. So, I mean, hopefully it's edited so that it makes me look like I know what I'm
That's
doing.
funny. I appreciate the candidness and
Yeah.
honest. That's a true pro right there. You know, when you're like, I really hope they make me look good.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny. Well, I'm sure it will turn out quite well, and it's got Brianna Evigan in it as well.
Yes, it was
Just
awesome.
a fantastic cast, and I tell
Mhm.
you, I mean, these types of stories are just so much fun to watch and
Yeah.
to be a part of, because really, I think in the world of content and streaming and so much to consume these days, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And to be able to watch a film that's fun, that's lighthearted, that's really character and story driven. It's great. I mean, I think that's what people want, you know. I mean, I love the superhero movies and the zombies and all of that, but it's nice to get a little bit of a break, I would
Yeah.
imagine, especially as an actor.
I think so. You know, I mean, I've always been attracted to character-driven movies for sure. And this, the last few years, it's been kind of looking for art house movies, from
Sure.
foreign art house movies or whatever, definitely smaller movies. Because, yeah, you see one of these superhero movies, I sort of feel like you're watching the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's not as interesting to me. So yeah, and it's very light. It's character driven. It's very funny, and these dancers are terrific dancers. The choreographer, Royce, sorry, I'm saying his name wrong now. Robert Royston. Sorry, I was saying Roy Royston. Robert Royston, who's like a champion West Coast swing dancer, um, is the choreographer in this, and he's just fantastic. And so I think it's beautiful, and you can escape into this story and into this character, and in the characters, and you come out feeling great.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll encourage people to take up West Coast swing. Who knows? But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice relief. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, you know, it is kind of the same formula a little bit, I think. But again, only knowing just an outside perspective of the industry, and of course talking to folks like yourself,
Mhm.
I don't I'm assuming if it's a formula, we're going to ride the wave until we can't ride the wave anymore. I mean, to get a movie made anyway is very challenging. To
Mhm.
make a good movie is even more challenging. But when you strike gold like you do with this and a lot of the other projects that you've been a part of,
Well, thank
you
you.
know, I absolutely, it's just really kind of like, wow, this is great. You know, like I'm
Mhm.
really doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a performer. And that's
Yeah.
the message that I get.
Right. I mean, looking back on all the things that I've done, I'm really proud of all of them. There's nothing that I'm embarrassed about. And so many of the movies that I did early on in my career have been revived. The Last Starfighter, Night of the Comet, uh, Mischief, Weekend at Bernie's, even. I mean, these are movies that I feel like people are craving. They crave sort of these sweet, um, kind of simple almost movies, but the thing that makes them special is you can really relate to the characters.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's what's missing in a lot of the movies today. You're just sort of getting blown away by the special effects and all the action and blah blah blah, but there's not really a comprehensive storyline. There's no kind of character buildup. You don't sort of feel like you can relate to the characters or have empathy for them necessarily. It's just a bunch of people beating the crap out of bad guys. It's kind of like old fashioned cowboy movie, like that sort of a theme, the cowboy movie, the bad guy and the good guy, and how they battle it out. But it's, of course, 2.0. But I
Yeah.
think people do crave those simple, more just feel good movies.
Yeah, well, you mentioned like some hits there just in that little answer. All of them I'm just thinking about in my mind, and all I've rewatched recently, you know, before we even set up a time to talk, but just kind of,
Mhm.
you know, looking for things to watch because I'm always watching content. In fact, I just did press for an NBC show before this, and I had to watch a couple episodes. So I kind of like to cleanse the palate a little bit with just some fun movies. It's interesting. You mentioned Weekend at Bernie's. I had forgotten about that. Um, Out of all that, I just, let's see, I'm 47, so I'm trying to think how old I would have been. I don't think I watched it when it came out necessarily, but probably later on when I was allowed to watch it.
Right.
But but I did watch The Last Starfighter, I think probably concurrently when it came out because that was a big
Mhm.
hit. And it was those movies that you all mentioned were sort of all in this time capsule of theater where they were just making a lot of these kinds of movies.
Right.
Um, I'm very curious before we dig into individual projects. Again, you've just done so much. In fact, I remember not too long ago you popped up on an episode of The Good Doctor, and I was like, "Holy cow!" This is somebody that. Do you remember that? It's been a while, about a couple years ago.
Uh, no, it wasn't The Good Doctor. It
Oh,
was
New Amsterdam. Was it New Amsterdam?
It was New Amsterdam.
New
It was New
Amsterdam. Okay.
Amsterdam. That's right.
Okay.
That,
Sorry.
yeah, that was the last episode of the season because that was shot. My last day on that show was March 13th,
Okay.
2019. No, was it 20 when the whole
20.
pandemic started?
Yeah.
And they had to cut the shooting. I didn't even get to film all my scenes because
Yeah. I heard that.
because we were they everything was shutting down that day. So I'm
Yeah.
just
I had crazy.
grateful that I got to, have that sort of last job before everything shut down. But that was bizarre. And who knew? Who knew it was going to last
Yeah,
as
that's
long as
a
it
whole
did?
nother thing. I mean, just I was talking to somebody recently and this show Inventing Anna on Netflix, and one of
Right.
the cast members was telling me, like, when you watch this, I'm two different people in that show. Like there's pre-pandemic Anders and then there's post-pandemic. I've been drinking beer and wine all night, every night for a year straight, and now you want me to fly back and finish shooting this project.
Oh,
What
it's so funny.
Yeah, it's crazy. So again, we'll get into some of these individual films because they're just so iconic, but what was it that interested you in becoming a storyteller? What was it that made you go, Catherine, I want to be a performer? Because it's such a different kind of business than what most people might be familiar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have always kind of been a performer. Let me put it that way. As shy as I was growing up, I was always very animated, and um, I want to say borderline obnoxious, probably.
Like
but
most kids, probably. Yeah.
but my mother, I have to give credit to my mother. I come from a very academic background. My dad is a professor. My mother she worked at a university teaching physiology. My brothers were both like honor students, and then there was me. I'm the youngest. And I hated school and all this other stuff. So my mother sort of experimented with me a little bit in terms of what the heck she was going to do with me. And the first thing she did was get me into ballet when I was 7, but I didn't like it because ballet is very regimented and structured and frankly boring. When
Hmm.
point your toe, don't point your toe, point your toe. It's like, oh. And then she got me into art, painting, and then she eventually, and then I did gymnastics, and I had this body that was perfect for sort of ballet and gymnastics. Eventually, she found this dance school that taught this teacher who taught jazz, and she kind of tricked me into going to a class because I was like, I don't want to do dance. I did ballet and I hated it. I got into this jazz class and everything fell into place. I found my zone,
Okay.
and so I ended up dancing for years, and I was in a company. I'm from Canada originally. I was in a dance company. We traveled all over the world. When I graduated from high school, I decided to continue with that. And I went to London, England, and took class at a performing arts school called the London Studio Centre, which not only did dance, but theater, acting and singing and all sorts of different kinds of performing arts. And so I got a really great foundation there in terms of acting. And then while I was in London, I went to a dance audition for a rock musical, just sort of by chance. Nothing planned, wasn't prepared, and it was this huge cattle call audition with probably 200 dancers, and I'm just kind of like bopping away trying to figure everything out. And the director saw me and pulled me out and auditioned me for the lead role, and I ended up getting it. So I
Wow.
ended up doing this movie overseas. We shot it mostly in Germany. Um, and that introduced me to acting. And from there, I just decided, well, I'll see what happens with this. And I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and just things started to happen. I ended up on my first major role, I guess, was Days of Our Lives,
Yeah.
on the soap opera. And then very quickly, The Last Starfighter happened. Then right after that, Night of the Comet. Right after that, Mischief. And then I did a bunch of other junk. And soon after that, Weekend at Bernie's. So it wasn't really something I sat down and made a decision to do. It came to me.
Yeah, I think that's how it works in your industry. Like, I
It
mean, there's
can, that's
probably
for
a small
sure.
percentage, that are, I was talking to DB Sweeney recently, and
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, he's been on the show a few times. So much
Nice.
fun.
He's a
But
good guy.
yeah, he's hilarious. And we were talking about how kind of he got his start very similarly, like
Mhm.
especially when the pandemic hit, like the percentage of people who are come to LA regularly to become an actor to Hollywood, so to speak, versus the ones that actually can stay and make it. And the percentages he was telling me were very, very low.
Oh,
It's a lot of no's, but I think for yourself and a lot of others, it just kind of comes to you. Uh, and
yeah.
again, you just had this. I mean, everything you've done has been great, but that period of time where
Mm.
you just were hammering out all of those hits, I don't think that's not common for somebody, is it, to like really just be able to pick up and just because everything that you did, all those movies, Mischief is another one,
Yeah.
Weekend at Bernie's, The Last Starfighter, Night of the Comet, like all of those just kind of came right after the other.
They did. They happened very quickly for me. So I just, and honestly, it's true. It's so much luck involved. But
Yeah.
when the opportunities come around, you have to be prepared for them. And last start, and also work begets work. If you get
Yeah.
a job, your name starts being, passed
Circling
around in
around. Yeah.
Hollywood, right? I mean, I remember one time, I think it was Kelly Maroney who was in Night of the Comet with me. She played my sister. She said to me, I got this audition today and it said, Catherine Mary Stewart type.
I was going to ask you that question because that seems probably like people were looking for that because of your success.
Right. I mean, I know that was like the biggest compliment ever. And, we sort of joked, we thought, what if I go in an audition and I don't get it?
I've heard of that happening before.
I
Like they're
know.
looking for like a Paige Davis type, trading spaces, and then like they go and audition and they don't get it. They're like, wait a second. I'm
I
like
know.
the one that you're like putting on the casting call sheet for auditions. Crazy, crazy, crazy.
I did have a similar experience in a commercial audition once. I did this. I did a commercial as a dancer. I was
Okay.
dressed as a ballet dancer and stuff like that. Then a few years later, I had this other audition. It was just a commercial for to be a dancer, and
Wow.
there literally was a picture of me from this commercial earlier on the breakdown. I mean, this is what we're looking for. And I went in and I did the little audition and I was not hired. And I'm like, but that's me.
That's funny.
So,
Yeah, you're like,
oh wow.
"Hello, wait a second here. This
Yeah.
is, you're looking at the original here.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't
It's
you know?" I'm like, "I was in Weekend at Bernie's. I was in
It's
Mischief.
inexplicable. I have no explanation for it whatsoever.
Well, that's
But
just the
whatever.
crazy business. Yeah. I
It
mean,
is.
everything happens for a reason. Well, I want to ask you about Weekend at Bernie's because
Okay.
I've read a lot of different things and a lot of stories about this movie. Because from what I understand, just the idea of pitching this, when I read the description out loud and think to myself, how insane of a story is this where basically they're carting around a dead person for the entirety of a weekend, and then I think there was a sequel, right? Like a couple of them.
There was one, I think.
Jonathan Silver, I believe.
Jonathan
Jonathan Silverman.
Silverman. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how does this movie get made? Because it's just, I love the film. It's hilarious, and honestly, I'm surprised it's not one that they haven't tried to reboot or retell or remake at some point
Yeah.
because the story is just so crazy. Like when you get offered this role, you've come off these other hits. Like,
Mhm.
what are you thinking? You're like, oh, this is definitely something I want to do, or what the hell are they trying to, because that was a very different time for movie making, by the way,
Yeah.
too, just so people know.
Very, very different time. Well, I mean, when I read the script and saw who was involved, I mean, Andrew McCarthy, Ted Kotcheff was the director who
Yeah.
was, he'd done tons of stuff, and Jonathan Silverman. And I hadn't really done a comedy on that level. I mean, this is a real sort of a slapstick, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. And also, I think at the time it was just kind of a unique comedy.
Yeah,
Um,
never has there ever been anything else like it,
well,
ever.
I mean, I think they've tried to do some. It's sort of along the lines, in a way, of Animal House. That sort of
Yeah.
crazy sophomoric boy humor. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, but maybe a little more. Maybe a little more sophisticated. There was certainly more money involved. Terry Kaiser, another incredible actor. Um, I was really interested in it because of the people involved
Okay.
and just the genre. I hadn't really done anything like that. So, but I have to say, when I first read the script, this whole concept, the part that really bothered me about it was the whole scene where they're dragging a dead body behind a motorboat and it's banging into buoys as it goes by, which everybody laughs at, like you,
But
hysterically.
the
And
idea of it's quite disturbing. I
I
get it.
was totally disturbed by it, but then I
Yeah.
just I just didn't get it. I just didn't get it at that point. But having said that, we had so much fun. I thought it was a terrific movie. It really kind of created its own genre. Um, and it was romantic too. I mean, I loved my character.
Yeah.
It was so much fun working with Jonathan. Um, that scene where we're in the lighthouse. He sort of
Yeah.
follows me down the beach or whatever. We walk to this lighthouse, and the light hits his eyes, and he gets blinded and falls down the stairs. I mean, it was so much. It was funny to shoot as well. The comedy was like hilarious. So it was hard to kind of not laugh. I'm sure we had to do lots of takes where we weren't laughing, but that particular scene, Jonathan kind of ad-libbed as we were walking down the stairs, and he was kind of limping. So I got to laugh. I didn't have to hold it back. It was
I
really
love
fun.
it. Yeah, I mean, just again, within that 10-year period of all those, I mean, again, everything you've done has been great, but just that period of time, of course, just kind of looking at things and just, I mean, I'll just say it, they don't really make movies like that anymore. I mean, they make
Yeah.
good movies, and of course, Ask Me to Dance is great, obviously, but just that kind of humor and comedy is really just,
You don't
it's
see that
different.
anymore.
You
Yeah.
don't, yeah, but thank God for streaming and the
Hmm.
ability to watch these things. One last question. Let's talk about The Last Starfighter. I'm sure you probably talk about this a lot, but this was such a great film and just so different for its time. Any
Mhm.
memories or stories from that film that you can remember or think of that just really stand out to you? and go, man, this was just a really special film. Because again, I'm surprised it's one that they have not tried to reattack and to do again. But I imagine you probably just had a fantastic time making that movie. I would hope.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think that comes across in the movie. The atmosphere on this set is so important, and you can feel it, on the screen.
Yeah.
I'm still really good friends with Lance Guest, who played Alex, and Nick Castle, the director, and
Okay.
even Craig Safan, the composer, who did that incredible music. And speaking of a remake, Jonathan Betchell, the original writer, has been working on a sequel. It won't be a remake; it'll be a sequel.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So just and Lance and I are supposed to be in it.
Wow.
So
That's so cool.
yeah, that would be so cool. I mean, I have so many wonderful memories of that. It was such a nice sort of relief from doing the soap opera. The soap operas are very hard to do, I find. A
Yeah.
lot of dialogue. You shoot
I
an
hear that
hour
a
show
lot.
in one day. It's a lot. And so working with these lovely, lovely people was like a little holiday for me. And I have nothing but good memories. And I'm so grateful because that was like the first feature I did in California, in LA.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best experiences I've had. Um, yeah, everybody. I mean, I met. I didn't actually work with Robert Preston, but I met him. We were doing some reshoots at the studio, pickup shots, and he had just finished doing some, and he was leaving when I was arriving. So I was introduced to him, and I will never forget that moment because it was Robert Preston, for Pete's sake, and he's exactly as you would think he was. And
Wow.
Lance speaks a lot about working with him and how wonderful he was. He was a man in his 70s, and Lance was this young kind of enthusiastic actor that just wanted to nail it. And so I guess he asked Robert Preston if he would rehearse over and over and over again. And Robert Preston was completely cool with him. He was completely chilled, a really great guy. Dan O'Herlihy, I had no idea what Dan O'Herlihy actually looked like. He was Greg, because I never saw him without the makeup. So I actually, years later, I did some research on Dan O'Herlihy, and I mean, of course, another iconic actor. Had done so much work. I loved him in Robinson Crusoe, for instance, which was like in the 40s. So and the other special thing about it was a real introduction to CGI, the whole special effects, which
Yeah, I'd
are
heard that.
everything in movies nowadays. But they were literally created CGI programs for the movie, which have since, exploded. It was really the first movie that had done it to that degree, to that extent. Because even while they were creating the CGI while we were shooting, and they weren't sure if they were going to be able to pull it off in time, and if not, then we just use traditional special effects, models and things like that. But they managed to. I think I remember at the 25th anniversary screening in Santa Monica, California, they had the whole technical crew there, and we did a big Q&A, and that's the first time I heard about what had gone on regarding the technical side of the whole movie. And apparently they wish they'd had more time. They feel like they could have refined some of the special effects much better, but it's a milestone. It's a milestone, that movie.
Yeah, I mean, and it still holds up, and it's interesting. I had heard stories about the fact that they were really punching above their weight class as far as like the effects and things like that. And sort of, again, like you mentioned, the things that they use in films now were just getting started back then. I tell you, man, it's just so much great work. And just kind of thinking about watch these films and shows that you've been a part of,
Mhm.
kind of inspires me a little bit to go back and rewatch a lot of them because, and of course, Night of the Comet was another one that I think I got in trouble for watching that one at one point, for obvious reasons. But it was a good. I mean, they're all just really good movies. And of course, this one, Ask Me to Dance. I think
Mhm.
everybody will really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody to be sure to watch it when you can, because it's just such a great film from what I've seen, just a little bit, and what I've read. I think people are really excited about it. Just a really phenomenal cast. Thank you
Yeah.
for the trip down memory lane and just talking
Oh,
about some
thank
great moments.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Catherine. I appreciate your time.
Oh, not a problem at all. Thank you.